Welcome to the Preventive Medicine Podcast. Help us change the paradigm of medicine from keep people alive to help people thrive, one episode at a time. And now, here's the show. So we are 56 minutes in. We want to be respectful of your time. So I guess the last question that we always ask the guest, whoever's on, is if someone runs into a coffee shop and you have like 2 minutes and they ask you, how do I get healthy? What do you tell them?
I tell them it's really about healthy eating. I think that exercise is important as well, but food is medicine. And if they think about they're choosing whether to eat a potato chip or an orange, we know that eating an orange is going to have a much more beneficial impact on them than a potato chip. So I'm a big proponent of exercise. I wish I exercised more, but I do know that the data shows that if they start thinking about food as medicine, they'll make important lifestyle changes, and it has a bigger impact overall on weight loss, and it has other aspects as well. So it's really about healthy eating.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And we want to thank you for being on this podcast. Sure. We actually prepared a couple more questions, so we'd love to have you on another time.
I'm going to ask you both first, though. What's your advice? What's your 2-minute advice?
Oh, flipping the tables on us. Jason, let's go first so I have time to think.
I would say my 2-minute advice is to just get the ball rolling. Like look at where you're at now. Think about goals and think about things you'd like to achieve or a lifestyle that you'd like to live, and take one small step today that leads you towards that goal, and try to do that every single day. And I think that for just kind of like off the cuff, I think that there's like, I would agree with Dr. Whyte that I would probably tend towards my own bias of nutrition being the most important thing. But I think for most people, so much of it is just the idea of starting and keeping it going. So whatever it is, whether it's you start with a better diet or you start with exercise, start with something today and let the snowball effect start happening.
Yeah, I think Jason and I are on the same page with that. And we had a conversation with Ed Cohn. I don't know if you've heard that name, greatest powerlifter. He was on this podcast earlier. And a lot of what I say is influenced by him because I learned a lot from him, but it's kind of just getting the ball rolling, where a lot of times if you start with a very small step, and maybe it's just like going for a 5-minute walk or replacing or drinking more water, not even replacing soda, but just doing something, and it gives you more of a idea that I can do this and I can make these small changes. And then you let those small changes compound over time. And before you know it, after like a year, 5 years, 10 years, they're in a much better spot than they were at the beginning. So
Dr. Whyte, I have a question for you in terms of this, may be a little bit more philosophical in nature, but do you think that in terms of how a patient views themselves? So one of the things we talk about sometimes on our podcast is building a resilient patient population. So do you think that how a patient views self is ultimately the most important thing in terms of making the right decisions going forward?
Absolutely. And I've seen this more in male patients than female patients. I'm not trying to be sexist. I've often have told, Kaiser is very good about giving patients their BMI. And I told, and this happens at least a couple times a year, and I tell the male patient that you're overweight. And I'm not joking. 6 times out of 10, at least more than half, they'll say to me, no, I'm not fat, I'm muscular. And I'll be like, you're not. Like, I don't say that, but in other areas, a lot of overweight patients do not see themselves as overweight. It's much more pronounced in men. So I see myself as muscular. I'm not going to make those changes because I think I'm healthy. And I've seen that time and time again. So how they view themselves is very important. It also goes into the misinformation when people read all this about vaccines. They'll be like, well, vaccines cause autism, vaccines cause cancer. I'm not going to take it, because in their mental framework, they don't believe the data. But you're absolutely right. How the patient sees themselves matters a lot. I mean, this comes up too a lot. So I often see patients that are other doctors' patients that I'm filling in for. And in diabetes, type 2, predominantly overweight. And I tell patients that if you lost 10, 20 pounds, you probably could come off, your metformin. And it's relating to your weight. And I hear this all the time from patients who say to me, I've been overweight for 20 years. I've only had diabetes for 2 years. and they're not making that connection that their weight is causing it, or they know, their grandfather was much more heavy than they were and they never had diabetes. So they don't make that association. So it definitely has an impact. And then it takes a lot of time to get them to change that perspective.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes down to communication once again on what the patient has been sold, what their experiences are, what they see on social media versus their own family versus their own lifestyle. And it comes down to communicating the patient, like how they see themselves and their world versus what the physician sees and what they recommend. So there's definitely there.
I had a patient last year that came in with, very severe knee pain. And, I'm asking about all these issues. And then finally she mentions that she's a marathon runner, like near the end, right? And I'm like, and I'm not joking, you can't make this up. And I'm like, do you think and actually say it like this, do you think your knee pain could be relating to your running? And she's like, no. Because I've been running for 10 years and I've never had pain. And it's really only been these last few weeks. And I'm like, because it's, cumulative over time. And I'll be honest, she did not think it was relating to her running and she was not going to stop her running. And I'm not saying she had to stop it completely, but, I've seen that a couple of times.
Dr. Whyte, how much time do you have? We have a couple more questions. We don't want to hold it too long.
If you want to ask 2 more questions, that'd be fine.
All right. We'll go more lighthearted route.
Okay.
So we were thinking of at the Discovery Channel. It's very interesting to see that they have like a chief medical expert. What does that entail? Because usually when you think of Discovery Channel, you're not thinking of medicine or anything related to that.
So I started at Discovery Channel and they actually had another channel called Discovery Health Channel. And I started my career at Discovery on Discovery Health Channel, where that's when I didn't know I was pregnant, started, 200-pound tumor, born without a face, tree man, which was HPV. I didn't know I was pregnant, as I said. So I started there and they really needed, content expertise as well as keeping everything on track. And then that was created into the Oprah Winfrey Network as part of a joint venture with Oprah. And I didn't really feel that her view of health was the same as mine of health. So I had the opportunity to move to the Discovery Channel. And for a long time, we had a weekend time slot of health and medical programming, typically on Saturday and Sunday around 7 a.m., 8 a.m. So I ran that programming for years, and then would be involved in some other shows when they would have some medical content. Honey Boo Boo was a while back. So they don't do as much medical programming and health program anymore, but a lot was, we actually had a time slot of health programming, which was helpful. And they have a great show on TLC called Pimple Popper. I don't know if which is really, just think, that's a good show when you can turn the volume off. You don't even have to hear what they're saying.
Just to watch the show in the background.
How do they find these people? And you just look at it and it's like,
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that there's like physicians, like your role in media. I think one of the ways that we can promote preventive medicine is through that route, where right now you have shows like Dr. Pimple Popper, where there's one thing, but if you can make preventive medicine more sexy or appealing in a way, then I think that could go.
But that goes to my first point. You have to show the initiative and you have to be creative. Don't think that anyone's going to come to you and say, you should be on this show or that show. Maybe, but you're going to have to come with those ideas and pull it through.
And then kind of just my last question for you is, I imagine you're an incredibly busy man. How do you take care of yourself? So, a lot of the times physicians probably do a pretty poor job as leading by example in terms of taking care of ourselves. So what do you do to take care of yourself?
And I'll tell you, I have 2 young children, and sometimes I look off to the side because at any moment they could break in. 2 young, adorable boys, 7 and 5. And I'd like to think, like, why aren't I, at a better weight? Because I'm always running around with them. And then maybe that's because we don't balance it well and we eat a lot of their crappy food, sadly, that children have when they don't finish their plate. But I'll tell you what I have tried to do, and I'm not good about being at home. So, I try to exercise 3-4 times a week, but personally, I like going to a gym. So that works for me. I like going to see other people. I like using machines. We don't have a home gym. I could get one, but I'm like, that's not going to work for me because my kids are going to come down there and follow me, and I'm not going to have my 45 minutes of free time. So I do try to do that. And I'll be honest, I traditionally have scheduled that into my calendar so I can do it. So before we used to live close to a gym, so it was very easy, a 5-minute walk. Now I'm a 20-minute drive. So I actually schedule it. So I make a priority and I look at my calendar, usually on Sundays, and say, like, when can I go? And then I am trying to do a better job at eating. And I'll tell you, being at home all the time under quarantine, I know it's harder because I wouldn't normally eat something at 10 o'clock at night. And sometimes when I'm still up, because it's easier than ever, yeah. I do. And you're limited by what's around you. But I have made that conscious effort to eat more fruit. I ate oatmeal this morning, and I really have made that effort to eat oatmeal. And I've actually had some issues with blood pressure over time, and I've done my own test. I saw when I really look at packaging and I see the salt content and choose not to do that and then measure my blood pressure, it's better. And I'll tell you, like a lot of the things you'd think, well, I'm going to go have a sandwich at Panera or Un Bon Pain or Pret a Manger. And I know you two know this. Bread has a lot of sodium, but most people don't know that. And they think, oh, I'm going to have this, fresh mozzarella and pesto sandwich instead of a hamburger. And then it's like, this is 970 milligrams of sodium.
Yeah, if not more than that.
Or I'm going to have a pressed juice, and that's, 32 grams of sugar. So it's really, I focus more on trying to figure out ways to eat healthy with children who don't always like to eat the same things that adults do. But I'll be honest, I've been trying different things when I'm home, whether ordering shakes that you can, but I do check the labels on those things. So those ones that have very high sodium or very high sugar content, even if it's fruit, I compare. And that's what I do tell patients. I'm like, so despite, I know you guys like to look at macronutrients and all of that, I tell patients, you know what? You can look at 2 yogurts and you may not even know what the right number is for protein and sugar, but you can compare. And if one has, 22 grams, that French vanilla, which is going to have, a lot of sugar versus 8, pick that one. So you don't even have to know. And then add your own blueberries in. And you know what? People can remember that. And they're always like, I never thought about it that way. So I'm trying to eat healthy and be more active. I'm giving myself a little bit of a pass during the quarantine. But as you move along in your career and you have family responsibilities, you do have to recognize I have to prioritize this and I have to figure out how to fit it in and be consistent. So sometimes I do use some trackers where you can see how many times you went to the gym and really try to plan over time. But it does take a commitment and a priority. Nowadays, I've been looking at steps. I don't normally look at steps, but I saw one day I only had like 2,200 steps. And I'm like, that's not good.
The quarantine life for sure.
Yeah. So now I'm trying to walk around, even if it's in the house or outside.
Yeah. I think we can wrap it up with that.
All right.
Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
It's been an honor to have you on the podcast, Dr. Whyte. Thank you so much for joining us.
And as a medical student, I wasn't thinking about podcasts and communications. I congratulate both of you for thinking, in these areas and in really wanting to understand. Really, it's about communicating to consumers and communicating to your colleagues. So, I congratulate both of you for what you're doing in the initiative and making the time to do this as well. So I was happy to help and happy to come back again. And I follow you on Twitter, as you know now.
Yeah. I was just going to ask if you would be okay with coming on again, because our conversation could definitely last another hour.
Definitely have room for more podcast time.
I'm not sure if I'm following Jason on Twitter. Am I following you on Twitter?
I'm not big on Twitter. So I'll be, once we start using our podcast Twitter, I'm going to be more active on there.
All right.
If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's not an educational Instagram. It's just my personal one, but
you know what? I don't do Instagram. I only use the WebMD handle, and I thought about it. I have to have some limit at some point, but I thought about it. So what's your Instagram handle? Maybe I'll look for you.
It's just J Garrett 041. It's like not even a promotable name.
That's too complicated.
Yeah. Like I said, I haven't really tried to branch out into the public social media world yet.
Yeah. So. And I get it. It's harder as a student when you're thinking about interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, is there anything Jason's plugged his Instagram. Is there anything you want people to like go towards? I know WebMD, everyone already goes towards that.
Yeah. I'm on Twitter, as you know, at Dr. John Whyte. Always happy to engage. So feel free to reach out again.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Preventive medicine is an incredibly important topic. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. For the full episode, find us on your favorite podcast streaming platform. If you enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it to keep that message spreading. Thank you once again for watching this video, and we'll see you in the next one.